That's right, my friends. You're allowed to hate me for two reasons today. One, because I started a video off with me getting a chant, as we did do the live ups and downs of AEW All In. You can check it out on What Culture Wrestling right now. But the main reason I wanted to put that in there is just to say thank you, and also thank you to everybody who hooked me up with some damn good tickets for AEW Dynamite and AEW All In 2024. I'm not going to name their names. They may not want to be named, but they know who they are, and you just treat me so damn well. I massively appreciate it. But I didn't get a lot of footage. Going forward, I'm going to try and do better at this. But I am one of these annoying pieces of trash who, when I go to these things, I try and keep my phone in my pocket, and I'll tweet a few things out because that's fun for, you know, people watching and engagement, all that kind of nonsense. But I like to take in, I like to keep it in my brain, and I like to have the memory. But as you can see, this is me at AEW Dynamite, one of the worst pictures I think I've ever taken of myself in my life. Don't really like taking pictures of myself. But it was really cool to go to a Dynamite taping in Cardiff, Wales, because, of course, it's the first time that AEW has done a taping outside of the North America, I should say. And while I've been to loads of WWE shows and loads of independent shows, and I've been to TNA shows and Ring of Honor shows, I just compartmentalize these things in my brain. So when it's AEW for the first time, I'm like, oh, it's AEW, and it's super duper cool. And again, I'm going to keep doing this that video, so please do forgive me. So many people came up and said hello. It blows my brain. It truly does. And it kind of makes me intimidated when I think about it here, because I don't think anybody watches the videos. I just make them and put them on live and just see the figure as sort of a statistic, and we go from there. But I also want to shout out these two as well. You can see them on the screen right now. This is Dynamite from Wales. It's Amira and Michael Oku. They are two British talents. If you don't know, Michael Oku, a few days after this, would lose the Rev Pro Championship to Luke Jacobs. But it was a cool moment, right? Because they came out for the dark match. They were taking on, or Michael was taking on Serpentico with Amira in his corner. And instantly it was like, this is why it's cool to have a show in your local town, in your local country, because you can bring out talent like this. I'm sure Michael Oku has a name around the world, but of course people in Britain, especially if you're a hardcore nerd wrestling fan like me, really know who he is. So it just brings the experience home. It's the worst thing I've ever said in my life, but it does. And it makes it a little bit more personable, and that way you're just going to enjoy it a little bit more. As with stuff like this, this is how close I was, right? And we get to the all-in stuff, you will see it's pretty much the same damn thing. Now I know that Chris Jericho gets a hard rap. Maybe that's fair, maybe that's not fair, but let's not worry about that for now. And I just want to talk about it from a man that's been doing this for 25 plus years. The coolest thing about sitting close to this ring, especially because I wrestle myself, and shout out to Alpha One Wrestling in Canada. I'll be with you in a couple of weeks or a week or so, and Chicago on September 26th, so make sure you get your tickets now for Second Wrestling. But he was taking on Tommy Billington, and to see him work that close, I mean, one, you could see that he was in control of the match, but also it's no surprise that he's as good as well. He's just way better than maybe sometimes we give him credit for. He's, 52, 53 years old. Apologize, Christopher, if I've aged you there. But it's just the small things that he does, which also builds me to this clip of Okada coming out. Once again, it's the small things that they do. Now, I was able to sit there and watch Claudio Castagnoli and Okada, and I put on my Twitter, my ex, whatever the hell we're calling it, simonmiller316, that it's one of the best matches I've ever seen live. But what I meant by that, again, is the position I was sitting in, how close I was to the ring, the things I could hear them talking about, and the way that they worked. It was just a masterclass in pro wrestling. Now, if you watched it on television, you will absolutely get a different experience from me. So shout out to that guy on social media that said, oh, Simon, you overbig these things too much. I wasn't trying to exaggerate. I was telling you from just a matter-of-fact point of view, it was meant to be a statement.
Actually watching Okada versus Claudio right now. You probably can't even hear me, but I feel genuinely, this is like the best match I've ever seen in my life. And it's just happening in Cardiff.
I knew that these guys were great. It's not hard to pick up on that. But maybe seeing Okada even more so, only because I've seen Claudio Castagnoli before when he was Cesaro and on other occasions. I've never seen Okada in the flesh. You really understand why they get the reputations that they do. Like, it's just amazing to watch. Then you feel sad in your tum-tum because you're like, man, I'm never going to be as good as that. How the hell do you do it? But I understand there is a cost involved here, so not everyone is going to do it. And, you know, no matter where you sit in an arena, you're going to have a great experience, I think, any wrestling show, because pro wrestling just has that magic to it. But I think that's sort of the unsung benefit of being able to be that close. If you're into studying matches like I am, again, because I am a geek, it was my favorite thing of the entire week, of the entire weekend, is seeing, well, this person's kind of brand new and you can kind of see them going through the gears in their head, which is perfectly understandable. Whereas this person has been doing it for decades and it's just effortless to them. And that's the reason they probably got to where they did do, because they just had an affinity for this stuff. But yeah, it was great. The atmosphere in that place was awesome too, which is always going to help because, again, it gets your adrenaline going and everything like that, which is also the same for this 6-man tag. Like, there's nothing more that I can say about it. I had the Young Bucks, I had FTR, we had Darby Allin and Jack Perry, and almost you could see the different levels, I suppose, of wrestler there, because Darby, he doesn't wrestle. That sounds really strange, but he just does stuff at full tilt. So there's no wrestling. He does a coffin drop and he just go. He does his suicide dive and he just goes. Everything he does is just 100%, which is also very similar for Cash Wheeler. That was an incredible experience to watch Cash Wheeler flying around the place. And I did tell this on Ups and Downs as well, but the other reason I like sitting there, again, because it just makes me feel like a right dork, is that we jump forward to All In here, but during the Chris Jericho Hook match, Brian Keith, shout out Brian Keith, I love Brian Keith, I know Brian for a long old time, looked at me and just went, "Shut up, Simon. Everyone likes to be involved in the show, right?" They just do. So I just wanted to put on there, but we'll zoom on past it so I don't become too much of a geek. But there was loads to this, especially, I mean, this is the oddest picture I've ever taken. I mean, what was I trying to do? But, you know, people move, so you have to be quick. That's Kid Lycos too and Nina Samuels. Another reason I like going, because they are two British talents who I've shared the ring with or been at shows with, and it's also awesome to see people getting their due. They did get wrecked by Chris Statlander and Stokely Hathaway, but that's a dream, right? To be an extra on a wrestling show and get beaten up or get thrown into Barry Barricade. And that's a weird picture for you, but I also did some wrestling of my own over the weekend. And on Friday night at Riot Cabaret, make sure you check out Riot Cabaret. They absolutely rule. I was the special guest referee by complete happenstance in the match between Cassius and Amira. She's back again, and they're going to air this soon, so I won't spoil the surprises. But it's one of the most fun, goofy wrestling matches I've ever been involved with, hence why I'm stood here in a ring wearing a feather boa. Why wouldn't I do that? When we get to All In itself, I mean, that picture looks doctored. Once again, the worst picture I've ever taken in my life. But that's how close I was to the ring. And I don't think... There was one show back years and years ago, maybe like 2008, where I was basically a fetus, where I was that close to a WWE Raw show. But this was different. I'm a different person. I understand things a little bit better. I could appreciate this more, I suppose. But, I mean, it was just awesome. Like I say, a lot of the things we've already covered, but we got to the ladder match, and you see people like Pac and Claudio once again working, and everybody, the House of Black and everybody in this stuff. And when the Canadian Destroyer, that I think was Nick Wayne and Malachi Black, when they went through that table, they were right in front of me. And when you actually hear the noises, and you hear the devastating thud of people being smacked around, you're like, oh man, these people are going for it. Like, I laughed too, I get it, at how small the ladders were, until Juice Robinson pulled out the biggest ladder you've ever seen in your life. Not a euphemism. But when they're being thrown into Luchasaurus's Kill Switch's face, and you can hear it, it's like, oh, it's horrendous. It's absolutely terrible. And this sort of ties in as well, because sometimes we argue about the predictability of wrestling and who should win and who should lose. This comes back to the whole UK conversation again. When Pac was able to get the win in that 6-man tag, it just made me feel great. He missed last year's, I think, due to injury. He can't have been happy about that. He was away for ages, whereas now he feels completely back in the fold. So I wouldn't have wanted it any other way, even though it did kind of feel weird. Oh, all of a sudden he's a Blackpool Combat Club member. Sometimes sense has to go out the window, and it has to be down to how it makes you feel warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum. And that's what this was. And again, how lucky was this? Getting to see a ladder match that close. I'm probably never going to be able to get to do that again. By the time they were just hurling through people through tables, I was like, how are you not dead? Got to see my man Hook as well win the FTW title. And again, this is the huge reason I liked it, is because Brian Keith talked about me. Such a sad person. It's unbelievable. And the Casino Gauntlet that I also got to see live, it's my favorite new concept in wrestling. People like saying, oh, well, these people used it here. I don't care about that. I'm talking about mainstream professional wrestling. And in terms of a big company introducing something that feels fresh to me, I don't think you want to overdo it. That's how much fun I think it is. I don't think you want it every few weeks or every few months, I suppose, as we are getting it now. I think we had 3 this year, which is sort of one every couple of months. It honestly would make you like the Royal Rumble. I would put it at any point, if AEW is going to continue to expand their pay-per-view calendar, I would have AEW Casino Gauntlet, or come up with a better name, because the pop for Nigel McGuinness, I don't think I've ever felt that way in my life. It was totally incredible. Same for Ricochet, and that's something no one can ever take away from me. Got to see Ricochet debut in AEW, a guy I've been watching for, 10 years? So that's pretty badass. But the Wembley Strong, and again, this kind of ties into a big argument too. 50,000 people were there, right? 50,000 people is not as much as last year. Who gives a flub? Again, I felt that energy, and imagine what it must be like when you are in the ring. On that note too, I don't have any pictures of this. Maybe I'll try and get one. Shout out to everybody that came to the What Culture Wrestling show on Sunday before All In. I think we had like 450 people there, which is absolutely nuts. And again, thank you for all the kind words. But it also, it translates into this as well. Watching the countdown, not knowing who's going to come. It is a problem across all of professional wrestling right now, WWE and AEW especially, that we need more branding when it comes to theme tunes, or we need names to come up quicker on the big screens, because there were sometimes like, well, who is this guy? But ultimately it went well. And the fact that Christian won, I'm an agent of chaos. I laughed. I thought it was wonderful. Also saw this sign. I thought I'd just present it without comment. I don't need that beef. MJF versus Will Ospreay was just something special as well. Like, it was a really cool match. I accidentally said it was 35 minutes after the fact. Forgive me, somebody had told me that when it was 25 minutes. But again, the cool thing about being so close to the ring is that their families were all around us. So we kind of got to chat to them about their experiences and what they thought was going to happen. And I love that. That personal touch just changes everything. It really does. Seeing those two up close as well was something special, because of course Will Ospreay works a very specific style and MJF has his own very specific style too, but it was such a good match, and I felt privileged that I got to see that and the main event, probably two matches that we may never get again on that kind of a stage. And the atmosphere was just unreal. Will Ospreay's entrance, going back to themes, that's a huge thing. We don't talk about Will Ospreay. He's got a great theme. But the Assassin's Creed inspired stuff, then MJF comes out basically like it's Rocky 2. I couldn't have faulted it. And the best bit, I don't know if this came across on television. I've watched a bit back, but I wasn't really looking out for it. The streamers that came down that you can kind of see here, they didn't move. They were hanging from the ceiling. We were like, is someone going to come out with like a vacuum and pull them down? But they did. I also can die happy because Sting obviously made his grand return after the coffin match. Once more, I don't think we need to go too crazy about this. He came out to Seek and Destroy. I'm obsessed with Metallica. We've talked about this on many a video. I'm not ashamed to admit I had tears in my eyes. I was so damn happy. And that was because the adrenaline rush, if nothing else, when I thought, oh crap, I get to see Sting. So I saw some people going, oh, you retired a few months ago. I don't care if he retired yesterday. That may have been my favorite moment of the entire week. I got to see Sting live in the dying days of WCW, and that wasn't the same. And in TNA a little bit too, but this feels like classic Sting. This feels like proper Sting. And yeah, again, it's the fact that I was front row, right? I got to be that close to the man, somebody I absolutely consider one of my favorite wrestlers ever. We don't need to talk about it. Again, this is what I'm talking about, when the experiences and how it makes you feel. You don't want to be too attached to your phones, although I did take a quick pic. When we got to Bryan Danielson's versus Swerve, this is the best picture I'll ever have taken in my life. I think this sums up the entire story of that match, as Bryan Danielson is bleeding from the head, looking absolutely terrified. But the best stuff actually wasn't the match itself, even though it's going to be a match of the year candidate, to say the least. And Swerve Strickland is special, man. That dude is magic. It's all the stuff afterwards with his family, and I do have a couple of clips of those, which is how I will end this video today. But because of where I was sat, I had a literal front row view of Brie Bella, or Brie Danielson, whatever she's called these days, and Bryan Danielson's children, and seeing them react and understanding the emotion of it all and the story. Some people haven't liked the build. I actually think now, in hindsight, looking back on the way that it did all turn out, I think I loved it, to be completely honest. But once again, it just sums up what wrestling could be. Final countdown made me pop out of my socks. Bryan Danielson winning, which was a feel-good moment, even though everyone says he didn't want to do this. And Swerve winning would have been awesome too. Everyone loves Swerve, as we should do. But Bryan Danielson arguably getting the final big moment of his career in Wembley Stadium, and people were going nuts. Like when the final countdown was playing and everybody was singing it, Bryan Danielson just laughing. He's just laughing because he's so unashamedly himself, but that made him more relatable, and that made him more realistic, and it made everybody else sort of feel something too. It was just genius. I think it's one of the best pay-per-views AEW has done. But of course I'm going to say that because I have somewhat of a bias from being that close. But that's just one of the benefits. I mean, at Wembley, they put you in this little, it's called the inner box. You get a wristband that says access to the inner box, or whatever it's called. You have to go through a separate gate. And that's why I want to thank people that were just outside that gate too. Because I went to the bathroom a few times, got a bladder like a horse. And people would chant stuff and say stuff, and I wasn't embarrassed by it. That's not what I mean at all. But it's certainly, I guess I was flattered by it is a much better way to put it. At one point I did during the Jericho match. I was like, you got to shut up, man. If anyone that rings hears that, they're going to think I've gone in for business for myself, which I do not want to do. I never want to be disrespectful. But genuinely, everybody involved, from the people that hooked me up to the seats, from you guys especially, you're absolutely MVPs. Thank you for treating me in a way that I probably don't deserve. But it really does. It kind of, this is a stupid thing to say, so you have to forgive me. But it kind of makes it feel like a lot of hard work goes into YouTube. Don't get me wrong. There are way, 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 way harder jobs, and I'm lucky and blessed to do this. But it's like any job, right? Sometimes it gets you down, and sometimes you're like, oh man, why can't I crack through to the other side? But to sort of get all of this love, which is what it was, feels like my bonus. And obviously, you don't get a bonus in the YouTube world. So I just want to thank, again, from both sides, the company side, the people side, the fan side, the What Culture side, whatever it will be. Thank you for just, making me feel good, I guess, is the best way to put it. And the next time I go to one of these, I'll try and vlog it better. But this is my weird mini vlog. And hopefully we had a good time anyway. Now do all the stuff with the video, like, subscribe, click videos, buy t-shirts, sign up to Patreon, Gorilla Mind stuff, Gorilla Mode, because that's the best pre-workout ever. That's it. I need to sleep. Haven't slept in 4 days. Take care. See you soon.